Thank you for watching videos by Jeff Sibelius and LandandAirPhotos.com. You just bought the Mavic Air 2, or maybe you're considering buying one. Do you want to get the best quality video that you can from it? In this episode, I'm going to review the Freewell all-day pack of neutral density and polarizer filters for the Mavic Air 2. Along the way, I'm also going to explain how these filters work and why you should use them for the best possible video. In this video, I'm going to review the Freewell all-day pack of neutral density and polarizer filters for the Mavic Air 2. I'm going to answer two questions. First of all, why bother using neutral density and polarizer filters in the first place? And second, why use Freewell filters? So let's talk for a minute about what these filters can actually do for you. Now, the most common analogy you hear when talking about neutral density filters in particular is they're like sunglasses for your camera. And that's kind of true, but it tends to give a distorted perception of what their purpose really is. If someone tells you that it's supposed to make your image darker, that's not accurate. A properly exposed image should look the same whether it's using neutral density filters or not in terms of brightness and darkness. So the purpose of the filter is not to make your image darker. Now, it is true that the function of a neutral density filter is that it blocks out a percentage of the light entering the camera and striking the sensor. But that's not to make the image darker, that's to make your camera work more slowly. You've heard the old adage that the ideal shutter speed for your camera is twice your frame rate. So if you're shooting at 30 frames per second, you want to have a shutter speed of 1/60th of a second. And the fact of the matter is, on a bright sunny day, you just can't do that with especially with a drone camera that has a fixed aperture and is limited in that way. Even at 100 ISO, which is the slowest ISO or the least sensitive ISO on your drone, you can't get the shutter speed down to a 60th of a second. It simply lets in too much light. So to accomplish that, that's what you need a neutral density filter for. You put the neutral density filter on your lens and it blocks out a percentage of the light. And hopefully it blocks out enough that you can actually slow the camera down to the point where you're shooting at 1/60th of a second for 30 frames per second video, and you get the best quality video out of your camera. So just remember, the purpose of a neutral density filter is not to make your image darker. Don't have that as an expectation when you use your camera. The purpose of it is to make your camera work more slowly. When you buy neutral density filters for drones, you normally get several of them in varying levels of darkness. This gives you the flexibility to reach that slow shutter speed no matter what your lighting conditions are. They typically range from ND4, which cuts out a small amount of light, to ND8, ND16, ND32, and even ND64. With this range of filters, you can manage your shutter speed from the gloomiest of cloudy days to bright sunny days out on the water or snow. So where does this rule come from? Why do you care whether you're shooting at a 60th of a second or a 1,000th of a second? When you use a slow shutter speed, that means that your shutter remains open longer as it's taking each frame of your video. And that means that your subject has more opportunity to move or can move a greater distance while the shutter is open. And what happens if your subject moves while the shutter is open? You get blur. Look at this picture of a jet. Compare it to this picture of a bird. Obviously, the jet is flying faster than the bird, but the jet photo has no blur and the bird does. This was achieved by using a fast shutter speed for one and a slow shutter speed for the other. So why do you want blur in your video? Well, because that blur softens the motion from one frame to the next, and the end result is a smoother video. If you have an extremely high shutter speed, it can actually achieve a jittery look to your video. With that explanation, I can show you two shots of a water fountain taken with the Mavic Air 2 with and without a neutral density filter. The first was taken at 1/8,000th of a second, as fast a shutter speed as you can choose on the Air 2. If I freeze the video, you can see the droplets of water very distinctly. Because the shutter speed was so fast, the water had no time to move during the exposure, and so you can see the droplets of water very clearly. Now let's look at the same scene taken at 1/60th of a second with a Freewell neutral density filter. In this case, it was an ND32 filter. If I freeze the frame, you can easily see the difference. The droplets are gone and all you see are blurred streaks. The net result is a smoother playback of video. The ND filter will smooth the motion of a moving subject, but it will also smooth the motion of a static subject taken with a drone that's moving. A polarizer filter is a little bit different than a neutral density filter. It does block out a certain amount of light. That's just inherent to putting almost any filter on your lens, but that's not its purpose. A polarizer is intended to cut reflection in your subject. Reflection off things like water, off glass, off tree leaves, and things like that. It also affects certain colors like blue and green. It can make them more or less saturated. And it can heighten the visibility of clouds in the sky. A typical polarizer filter attaches to your lens and then it rotates once it's attached, so you can actually adjust the amount of polarization that you achieve in your image. The pack of filters from Freewell, this all-day filter pack, comes with one dedicated polarizer filter and then 4 hybrid or combination filters of neutral density and polarizer, ND 8, 16, 32, and 64. Watch this scene taken with my Panasonic G9 camera in a polarizer. The camera is exposing with manual settings, so any change you see will be the result of me rotating the polarizer. As I turn the polarizer, watch how the glare on the water becomes more and less evident. Notice how the color of the water in particular changes. At one point, the water almost takes on a metallic look from the polarizing. Here's a polarizer filter for the Mavic Air 2. You can see on one side is the word Freewell. Opposite that is the filter label to show what filter we're using. In this case, ND16 CPL, which means a neutral density filter with a circular polarizer. On the red ring you see a white line. As we rotate the filter, that line allows us to keep track of where our rotation is, pointing at one of the words or somewhere between. Now let's take a look at our first scene with the Mavic Air 2 and an ND32 Polarizer filter. Here's the scene with the white line pointing at the ND32 CPL label. Here's the scene with the filter rotated 90 degrees, so the white line is pointing straight up, halfway between the ND32 CPL and the Freewell branding. Rotated another 90 degrees, here is the scene with the white line pointed at the Freewell branding. Finally, I rotate it again 90 degrees, so the white line is pointed straight down, halfway between the filter label and Freewell branding. I think the Freewell Polarizer is less obvious than the one on my Panasonic camera, but you can still see the difference in the sky and the water as I rotate the filter. It cuts glare and influences blues and greens. Want to test these files for yourself? I have uploaded full-size clips of the Polarizer Test and the G9 camera Polarizer Test, as well as the fountain scenes with and without the ND filter on my show notes page. You'll also find the full script of this episode there. You can download them and watch them on your computer yourself. You'll find the link in the description below. Okay, you've probably figured out the biggest limitation of using a polarizer filter on a drone like the Mavic Air 2. When your drone is 1,600 feet away and 100 feet up in the air, you can't exactly reach up and turn that little red ring on the front of the lens. To use a polarizer on a drone, you have to set it before launch. Power up the controller in the drone. Point the drone in the direction of your flight and watch the FPV view to help you choose the amount of polarization you want. Incidentally, a polarizer filter is most effective when pointed at a 90-degree angle from the direction of the sun. You should plan your flight to do most of your shooting on a 180-degree arc from pointing at a right angle to the sun to a left angle to the sun. The effectiveness of the filter is diminished as you start to point the filter in the direction of the sun. Okay, so that answers my first question. Why use a neutral density filter or a polarizer filter at all? You get smoother video, you cut the amount of glare and reflection that you get in your image, you can influence the saturation of colors like blues and greens, and you can kind of puff up some of the clouds in your sky. So that leads me to my second question, why Freewell? There are several brands of filters for the Mavic Air 2 on the market. There are recognized brands like Freewell, and there are other brands or even non-brands that you can find on eBay at varying levels of prices. And believe me, this is normal for filters of all types for all cameras. If you were to go to B&H Photo, you'll find a polarizer for my G9's 12-60 lens as cheap as $27 or as expensive as $138. Okay, when it comes to accessories for drones, and there are a lot of accessories for drones, I know that, I will sometimes buy the no-name brands, the really cheap knockoffs that you can find on eBay and on Amazon to save some money. And then for a lot of things, there's no reason why you shouldn't do that. Not with filters, though. Remember, every shot you take passes through that filter. Every photo, every video you shoot will be affected by the filter that you put on the front of your lens. So why would you spend $800 on a Mavic Air 2 and then put a poor quality filter on the front and mess up the quality of your shots? When it comes to filters, buying the name brand, buying a good quality filter just makes sense. Freewell has been making filters for all GoPro and DJI cameras since 2012. They also make filters for other drones from Autel, Skydio, and Parrot. Unlike other brands, Freewell manufactures its own filters, and with their experience, they have engineered filters that are color neutral, lightweight, and durable. The filters are made of quality optical glass, and they're coated to eliminate glare and provide protection to the lens from water, dusts, oils, and scratches. Freewell stands behind their filters with a lifetime warranty. The Freewell filters are really easy to take on and take off from a Mavic Air 2, unlike the old filters that you'd find on things like the Phantom 4, where you practically had to use a pair of pliers to take them on and off, and then you're afraid you're going to mess up your camera. They're really easy on the Mavic Air 2. To take the filter off, you simply turn it slightly. Now it's loose, and it lifts right off. To put it back on, you simply set it into place and turn it. And it connects in there, and it's very firm, and it's not going to move around while you're flying. The red ring on the filter, this is a polarizer, the red ring turns very smoothly, but it takes a little pressure to move it. So while you're flying, that red ring isn't going to move around and change the polarizing effect that you set as well. It's just really good quality. I guess if I had any beef at all with the Freewell filters, and it would be with the polarizer filters, it is that the polarizer filter doesn't seem to have quite as significant an impact on the image as you'd find with a polarizer filter on a Micro Four Thirds camera, for example. And that may or may not be a good thing. What I find is that the filter on a camera like this has a huge impact on the colors and the look of your image. Cutting out the glare off water, that's cool. It does that really well. But you can actually turn this thing to a point where it will make water appear artificially blue and metallic, or the sky can take on a very unnatural tone. So Freewell may actually have it right on that one. So let's talk for a minute about who should and should not buy Freewell filters. By the way, I'm going to talk about several filter options from Freewell as I discuss the various types of users who should use filters. And if you're interested in purchasing these for yourself, you'll find links to them in the description below. So let's start with the beginning pilot. Should a beginning pilot go out and buy a set of an all-day set of filters from Freewell? Probably not. Your responsibility right now is learning how to take this thing off and land it in one piece. Get out there and learn how to fly this thing safely and responsibly, and learn how to operate it the way you want to operate it, rather than tinkering with a lot of different settings and filters and manual camera settings and things like that. However, the Mavic Air 2 ships with a filter that's attached to the camera, and it's a really very poor quality. It's very thin. It's just there to kind of keep the dust from blowing into your lens and doesn't do anything more than that. For $19.99, I believe it is, you can buy an IR UV filter from Freewell that is much better quality and offers much better protection than the standard filter that you get from DJI. So if you want to protect your filter for 20 or your camera for 20 bucks, that's a real smart investment. So let's say that you are an established hobbyist pilot. You know how to operate your drone. You want to start getting into working with your camera settings and controlling your settings with manual settings and managing your shutter speed and ISO, things like that. And you really want to ramp up the quality of your video. You can get this, and this is a great set. They also have a set called the Bright Day Pack, and it is 4 filters rather than 8, and that is combination neutral density and polarizer filters that are ND8, 16, 32, and 64. So that's a great opportunity. It costs $69.99, so it's not as expensive as the full filter pack, and that would give you quite a bit of flexibility to start with. If you're an experienced photographer, if you're a professional drone operator, if you are really into getting the best quality you can out of your drone, you can't beat this pack. It comes with 3 neutral density filters, which is ND4, ND8, and ND16. So that covers you from cloudy days, really cloudy days, all the way up to moderate sunshine. It comes with a polarizer filter that has no built-in neutral density other than what you get with any polarizer filter. And then it comes with 4 hybrid or combination neutral density / polarizer filters, ND8, ND16, ND32, and ND64. And with that range of filters, you're covered from anything from shooting at dusk to shooting on the surface of the sun. It really is a remarkable range of filters. It gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility. The only thing that you can't get out of this is if you want to do really long exposures, like 1 or 2 or 3 second exposures for photography. You can get other filters that even have higher density than the ND64. Freewell has those as well. But for flying and getting great quality video and photography in virtually any normal setting, you just can't beat this set. It's $129.99, and with the quality and the ease of use that it offers, you really can't beat it. So that concludes my review of the all-day filter pack from Freewell. Now, is it necessary to go out and buy neutral density filters to fly your drone? No, of course not. But look, you just spent $800 to buy this drone, right? It's worth a little bit extra to improve the quality of protection that you put on the front of your lens to keep your camera safe in case it crashes or dust or anything else. And it's worth a little bit extra to make a great camera drone even better. If you're willing to put forth the effort to learn how to use manual camera settings and to learn how to use the filters, it takes a little bit of work, but it's something you can pick up very quickly. But if you're willing to do that, you're going to find that your pictures and videos on the Mavic Air 2 improve, and you're going to find that you're a better, more knowledgeable photographer on any camera that you work with as well. Now, as I said before, you can find really cheap knockoff filters on eBay, for example. Again, I will buy cheap accessories on occasion, but when you're talking about something that influences every image you shoot, you want good quality, you want something you can trust. And Freewell backs their stuff with a lifetime warranty, and they've got the years of experience working with drones and action cameras to build that kind of quality in. And that's the reason why I agreed to do this review in the first place, and why I think I can wholeheartedly say I encourage you to to go with Freewell to buy the filters for your drone. Hey, are you thinking about buying a Mavic Air 2? You should. It's a great drone. If you are, and if my videos are helping you, I hope you use the link in the description below and order direct from DJI. If you do, you'll be helping to support this channel so I can make more tutorials and more videos on the Mavic Air 2 and other drones for you. Speaking of other videos, I've got a playlist on screen right now with all kinds of videos on the Mavic Air 2, so please check that out before you go. Also, before you go, hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell icon so you'll be notified when I publish again. Thanks for watching.